In this chapter, we'll discuss about home loan. We'll not discuss about the entire aspects of home loan, that we'll discuss later. But since we are right now discussing about various legal aspects, we'll discuss legal aspects pertaining to home loan, and the other general aspects we'll discuss in a later chapter. Housing loan is one of the most important loan products of any bank. Because for companies there are many facilities like term loans, working capital facilities, LCs, BGs, packing credit, etc. For individuals like you and me, probably the most important loan we might ever take is housing loan because of the amount of loan. A bike loan, for example, might be less than 1 lakh. A car loan may be around 5 lakh, education loan around 5 to 10 lakhs, but the largest loan you'll ever take, if at all you take, will be the housing loan. And the repayment period will also be very high. It will have a huge impact on your life, maybe up to 10 years, where every month you have to pay EMIs. It's very important business for banks also, because various banks compete with each other to attract customers for these housing loans. So in view of the importance of the housing loan portfolio, you need to be well aware of the various aspects related to housing loans. So first of all, let us see the typical process of housing loan sanction in banks. First of all, banks will have an application form for housing loan. So applicants should fill the application in the form along with some documents. The bank will stipulate what are the documents to be submitted, and the application that should be attached with these documents and submitted to bank. Bank will do something called KYC and other verifications. KYC means know your customer. We'll see more about this later, but basically it's about establishing the identity of the person. Otherwise, some antisocial elements or some foreign nationals, some terrorists can enter the banking system, the formal banking system, which we don't want. So banks will ensure that to verify the identity of the applicant. So that is KYC now. We'll discuss about that later. And they'll do other verifications also. Maybe they personally sent a bank officer to the house to verify and other such things. Banks will also try and get the CIBIL score to get an idea of the past credit history of this applicant. Then after scrutiny of the application, then a personal interview will be conducted with the bank official. And finally, if everything is fine, a loan application will be, a sanction letter will be issued to the bank. And then some documentation formalities will be done. Well, the bank's panel advocate will go through the title clearance, that is whether that the housing loan, that particular property is free from all encumbrances and there are no legal complications. Then there will be a valuation by a panel valuer to assess because to give the quantum of loan, banks will need to know what is the value of that house, right? So if say the particular flat is say 30 lakhs and banks say have a policy that they will give 90% of the property, then they will give 90% of 30 lakhs. So 27 lakhs. So to arrive at that amount, they need to know the value of the property. So they will do the valuation by a property valuer. And then if everything is okay, then the documents will be collected and title deeds will be deposited and stamping, execution, everything will be done. Finally, loan is disbursed. So let us see the various terms you need to understand here. One is title. This is a term which you will hear a lot in real estate, not just in housing loan. In real estate in general, you will hear a lot about title. In property law, title is a bundle of rights, right? In respect of a property in which a party owns a legal interest, right? It may also sometimes in common language refers to that particular document, like the title deed, right? That also is used, but basically title in legal parlance, it means a bundle of rights in a piece of property. So in this chapter, we'll see various legal aspects pertaining to housing loan, since this is where you get a lot of terminology. And as I said, other aspects like eligibility, etc. will be discussed in later chapters. So first of all, let us see the various documents that you need to submit to get housing loan. Banks insist on a variety of documents because housing loan is a very lengthy process. A lot of amount is involved, so banks will be very careful to collect all required documents. They will not, in fact, at some point of time, you will feel that they're collecting too many documents. Why do they need so many documents? But that is just to protect the interest of the bank. And as a future bank, you should also know what are the documents they're going to collect. One document is title clearance certificate. So the applicant has to obtain this title clearance certificate from the advocate. What this certificate does is it certifies that the property which that applicant is proposing to purchase is unencumbered. Unencumbered means free from debt. So banks want to make sure that no other bank has sanctioned loan for the same property. Because if say this particular applicant may have availed a housing loan from some other bank, now he's coming again afresh for a new loan from a separate bank. Now, so for the same property, multiple banks are financing. That is very wrong, right? So banks want to ensure that there are no other banks that are sanctioned to the same property, and that they do by ensuring that this is unencumbered, and that they will ensure through a title clearance certificate that will be given by the panel advocate. They'll also insist something called chain of conveyance. Chain of conveyance means like how did this particular land or property come to this applicant? How has this changed years over the years? Over the years, like how has this changed hands? Who are the past owners? Say for example, original owner of this particular property where the housing loan is proposed is A. Say in 1954, A sold it to B, and in say 1971, C gave this as a gift to D, and then maybe D's children had a dispute between themselves, and the property was split into two parts by a partition deed. That can be done, right? A partition deed, we can partition the property. So you can see there is a sequence of transactions, and this property has changed hands from A to B to C to D. So this is known as chain of conveyance, right? All this will be captured in the title clearance certificate. Then another certificate is ULCRA clearance. This is Urban Land Ceiling and Regulation Act. This is not applicable in all cases. It's only applicable in some cases where land ceiling is applicable. It was a law passed in 1976 in order to create social equality, right? Because at that time there was a lot of profiteering going on, and urban land, many people used to obtain a lot of urban land and hoard it, you know. So at that point of time, a law was passed where urban cities were categorized into ABC categories, and a ceiling was put like on the highest permissible usage of land that was fixed in the act. So that is applicable in only some areas. So wherever it is applicable, that clearance has to be obtained. Then there is something called RTC extract. RTC means record of right, tenancy, and crops for inspection. This is actually relating to kata of agricultural property. This is a very important document for tracing title of agricultural land. So again, this is not applicable in every case, only in case of agricultural land. So whenever the property is located on converted land, converted means this land was originally for the purpose of agriculture, now it's converted into non-agricultural use. So to establish the title of such lands, if you're applying a housing loan for a city, it's not applicable. But if you're applying housing loan in those sort of converted lands, you need to get this RTC extract. So there's something called a sub-registrar where the registration formalities will be done. So just by registering the document in sub-registrar, you will not get absolute property ownership in this sort of agricultural lands. You have to approach the revenue authorities where they enter the ownership details in the records, and they will make the entries relating to the size of the plot, location, build up area, and so on, and they'll arrive at the exact quantum of property tax to be payable. Okay, and these documents are called kata certificate also. Remember that you will get the ownership through title deed only. Title deed is sufficient to get ownership, but kata certificate are only supporting documents to authenticate your ownership. And there are some advanced documents like index to and all that you need not worry about. But just remember, in case of agricultural and converted land, you need to get the RTC extract, which is used to establish the title of in case of converted lands. Okay. Then there's a conversion order. As I said, this for only converted lands. Generally, land pockets are available mostly are agriculture, because the major occupation in India is agriculture. So government, in order to protect those lands, has taken a number of steps. So if the general use of such lands is agriculture, and if it is used for any other purpose, permission should be obtained from the competent authority. There are some lands that are earmarked, like these are agricultural lands in some regions. So if you want to use it for some other purpose, say you want to set up a factory or something, if you want to use that land for some other purpose other than agriculture, then the permission has to be obtained from the competent authority. That is a legal process. Conversion is a legal process. That is also known as, this certificate is also known as a land use or DC certificate. Then there is something called joint development agreement. What happens is, sometimes the builder is the person who is constructing this, say apartments. The builder enters into development agreement with landlord. Remember, the builder need not be the owner of the land. I may have a land, but I'm not a builder. Maybe I'm working in some other company. I just have a land. I don't have expertise in building, and my business is not construction, but I have some land in my name, but I don't have the money to build anything. I can build apartments in that land and give it for rent, but I don't have the money. I have just land. What usually happens is builders, the construction developers, who actually do the construction, they'll not have land. They might have land, but in many cases they themselves don't have land. What they do is they enter into an agreement with landlords. So, for example, you might be having some land in your name, right? But you don't have the money to build anything on that land. So, because you are working in some company, your expertise is not building flats and construction, but you have land, sufficient land where an apartments can be built, but you don't have the money nor the expertise to build it. Now there is a construction builder who is interested in constructing, but he doesn't have the land. So what they do, both of you enter into an agreement. So you go to the builder and ask him, you build some flats in that land, or he will approach you and say he'll build apartments in that land. There will be no money exchange. You will not give any money to the builder, and for that land also, that this builder will not give any money to you. It's just an agreement where after construction, say 10 flats are built, you will get say 4 flats, and the builder will get 6 flats. So he can sell the 6 flats to outside parties and get money, and you will keep the 4 flats to yourself, and then you can live in that flats or rent it to somebody else. So without exchange of money, through this development agreement, right? This is called a development agreement. Without land, the builder will be constructing apartments, and without money, you will get the flats. So this is how in many cases this is done. Okay, and this exact sharing ratio, like 6 flats or 4 flats, that depends on many factors, like how much money that builder is investing in the property, the location, and many other factors. But basically, the point is both of the parties benefit. Okay, so the landlord is getting flats without spending any money, and the builder is able to construct without owning the land. So in such cases, they'll enter into what is known as a development agreement. And if that is the case, if this housing loan applicant is proposing to buy a apartment or flat or a house where that property is built through this type of agreement, then banks will also ask for a copy of that development agreement, right? In most cases, development agreement is like the builder will agree to give some X number of flats to the landlord, and there is no exchange of money. Okay, so banks will also ask in such cases for power of attorney executed by landlord in favor of the developer. We discussed about power of attorney earlier. Then banks will also ask for building plan. Building plan is a very important document, because just because you have a land and money doesn't mean you can build a house as per your liking. There are a lot of issues here. For example, your house may be close to a main road, in which case there should be some distance between the road and the house. Say you're living in an area where Navy is operating, your building height cannot be above a particular height. You need Navy clearance for that, or Air Force. So there are a lot of issues here. So before starting construction, builder has to take approval from the local authority for construction, and the issue of permission for construction is based on the rules and regulations of the particular authority. Usually is the municipal corporation, and if everything is clear, then the authorities will issue what is known as a approved plan of construction. Okay, so when consider housing loan applications, bank will ask for building plan. So basically the purpose is to establish that the construction is authorized. Then there is another document called layout approval plan. Layout approval plan should be approved by the local development authority, and layout is like, how is this so where are you building say for example, apartments is being built. So the layout means, so which space is earmarked for parking, say the cellar, where is the watchman's room, where is the lift going to be built, and staircase, the layout of the various houses. All this is the layout. Okay, this layout has to be approved by the local development authority, usually the municipal corporation. And if the construction is not as per the approved plan, the municipal authorities will be having a right to demolish. This has happened in many cases. If the construction is not as per the approved plan, for example, sometimes you come across apartments where, as per the approved plan layout, the ground floor, the cellar should be totally free, no constructions happen, and it should be left for parking. But what happens usually, the builder will build an additional flat somewhere in the corner, because that extra flat he can sell for 30 or 40 lakhs and get an additional income. But many apartments have done this, and in many cases municipal authorities have demolished them. Okay, so if the construction is not as per approved plan, a demolition can take place. So banks will ask for the layout approval plan also. Okay, this even if the title is proper, even though the title is proper, if the construction is not as per the approval plan, then it is wrong and it can be demolished. So banks will be very particular about layout approval plan also. Then bank will ask for various NOCs. NOC stands for no objection certificate, and NOCs are required to obtain from various government departments, like for example electricity department. So like electricity department will say we have no objection. It's not they have not yet given power connection to the house, but they'll give a letter saying we have no objection to issue a connection in this particular area. So that there will be a letter to NOC from the electricity board, from the water board, from the pollution control board, sewage board, fire department, various government departments. The builder has to get the approvals, and bank will ask copy of all these NOCs. Then there is a commencement certificate. Commencement certificate will be issued by the municipal authorities. Okay, permitting the builder, now you can start the construction. If everything is placed, all the approvals are in place, then the municipal authorities will give this commencement certificate. Then payment receipts. When you buy a house, it's a huge amount, right? Like 25 lakhs at the 50 lakhs. So you won't make the payment at once. You make it in phases based on the progress of the work, based on the construction. Say first slab is raised, then you pay some amount, some advance booking and all this. So whatever you pay, you will be given some receipts by the builder. So bank will ask you, what is the money you have spent so far? So what are the proofs? Give us the payment receipts. So you have to give the copy of the payment receipts. Then EC, banks will ask for a copy of EC. EC is like encumbrance certificate. This certificate ensures that the complete ownership of the property is without any legal liabilities. So you can get EC can be obtained by anyone. There will be something called a sub-register office. You need not be the owner of the property to get EC. Anybody can get it. Usually banks will ask EC from the date of purchase till current date, at least for 30 years. So for the last 30 years, they'll ask this EC, and EC will show during this period who has bought and who has sold. So all these transactions on this property, all the transactions, there will be the list. Usually this will be asked by buyers. Whenever a buyer wants to buy a house, they'll ask the EC. So they'll know the past transactions of this property. And if everything is in place, no transaction taken place, you'll get a nil encumbrance certificate. Then bank will ask for latest property tax paid receipts. Property tax is a tax paid by the levied by the local municipalities. This is a tax used for meeting the expenses of public services. The local municipal corporation has to meet public expenses like street lighting, roads, construction of schools, buildings, sanitation, etc. So to that they will levy a tax called property tax, and the amount varies based on the location and property size, etc. So it's liability of the property owner to pay the property tax. So bank will ask up to date property tax paid receipts whenever you're considering housing loan proposal. Of course, this is not applicable if it's for a new house. If it's a new house under construction, this is not applicable. But if you're purchasing a house which is occupied by a past tenant for some years, then you have to get the latest property tax paid receipts. Then banks will ask for latest electricity bill. So electricity bill is another solid proof to establish the ownership of the current owner. So banks will also ask for this. Banks will then ask for income tax clearance. This is not applicable everywhere, but it's only applicable in some cities where transactions above a certain value. For large value transactions of house sales, there's a section of 37(1) and 230A, 37I and 230A in the Income Tax Act where the clearance is required. So this certificate will confirm that the seller has no dues or outstanding in terms of the income tax payable for him, because income tax will track all the whether any person is has pending dues, whether they have to yet to make any income tax payments. So this clearance is required with respect to the seller. Okay, so this is applicable, as I said, in only some cases. For example, say in Bombay, it's around, if the sale consideration exceeds 75 lakhs, it's required. In Delhi, it's 50 lakhs. These are not exact rates, and you need not remember these figures also. Just remember that in some cities, if the sale amount is beyond a certain value, income tax clearance certificate of the seller has to be obtained. And there is a valuation report. This we discussed earlier. Just because you say the property is worth 50 lakhs, bank will not believe you. It requires proof. So bank will carry out what is known as property valuation, that is done by a chartered engineer or accountant, architect. And this is required to fix the loan eligibility. you may say the property is worth 60 lakhs and say you applied for, and say the bank's rule says that you can give, they'll give loan up to 80%. So you are applied for 80% of 60 lakhs, that's 48 lakhs. But maybe that after valuation the property value is set to be only 50 lakhs. The engineer who has valued it is of the opinion that this property is worth only 50 lakhs. Then bank will sanction only 80% of 50 lakhs, 40 lakhs, not 48 lakhs. Okay. Then after everything construction is completed, there will be something called a completion certificate. This is required to ensure that the building is constructed as per approved plan. It is a document stating whether the building has been constructed according to the rules and regulations, and is again issued by the municipal authorities. Various factors they look into, like whether the building has complied with the permissible height, distance from the road, etc. And if everything is fine, they'll give this completion certificate. Then there will be something called occupancy certificate. Occupancy certificate is issued to certify that the building is complete and fit for occupation. Okay, if it's fit for occupation means that the civic authorities will give you it's like signifying that the building is compliant with the approved plan. And some big buildings you also require firefighting equipment, and all this will be checked into, and if it is fine, then occupancy certificate will be given. And this is mandatory for any builder before he allows people to take possession of the property. Then sale agreement. Sale agreement is a very important document in the process of sale of any property. So it contains the terms and conditions between the seller and the buyer. Okay, and is a legal document executed on stamp paper. It contains various details like what is the price, what is the per square foot price, delivery date, whether there are any penalties for late payments, which is the flat of floor the proposing to sell to the buyer, the carpet area, everything. Most of the technical details will be given. And if actually there are two documents here, one is the sale agreement and the sale deed. Sale agreement comes before sale deed. First there will be sale agreement and then there is a sale deed. Usually sale agreement will not confer any right on the property. However, in some states the sale agreement is registered and will act as a sale deed. So this might be confusing to you, but simply remember that there are two documents, sale agreement and sale deed. Sale agreement comes before the sale deed. First there will be sale agreement, that is before entering into this agreement. So the buyer will initially enter into an agreement with this builder, and they'll discuss, and in the agreement will be this which flat he is allotted, the price, square foot, everything, when the building will be handed over, and all these details. And once the construction is completed and is ready to be handed over, then there will be a sale deed. Sale deed, also known as a title deed or mother deed or conveyance deed. Okay, and this is required to establish the ownership of the seller on the title of the property. So it is the sale deed is the main property document which acts as the evidence for the sale and transfership of ownership in respect of the buyer. Okay, and this is also the main property document for further sale. If you want to sell it in future to some other person, then this document is required, because it is the only document that establishes your proof of ownership. Okay, and if this sale deed is lost, really it's very difficult to sell it to another person. First of all, the other person will not be willing to buy. There are steps to be taken, like you have to inform the police, and the police will then give you a certificate that it's not traced, no trace certificate, not found certificate. A paper advertisement has begun. A lot of headache. Okay, this is the main document, sale deed, and it is executed after execution of the sale agreement. Okay, so this sale deed confirms that all the terms and conditions in the sale agreement are complied with, and then the buyer and seller will go to the register office, sub-register office, and get it registered, sale deed. Okay, then the bank will also ask for NOC from building association. If it's apartments, there will be an association. Of all the houses, there will be an association. So NOC will be asked from the apartments owners association. It is to confirm that the association doesn't have any objection on the ownership transfer on the sale of the flat. Okay, and then there will be a no-due certificate, like the earlier owner who is the tenant who has occupied this apartment, if he has any pending dues, okay, those have to be recovered first. So association will give a no-due certificate confirming that the owner has cleared all dues and association is in custody of the original documents. Then there's an allotment letter. This will be obtained from the builder or the cooperative society housing board. So this is for description of the property and project specification. Okay, and it also mentions the amount of money the buyer has paid to the housing society, so that the remaining amount can be financed by the bank. And on this basis of this allotment, banks finance the balance amount. Now allotment letter is only issued first to the first owner, and subsequent owners will not get it. They'll just they can ask for a copy of the allotment letter. Then there's a possession letter for the builder. So once the person, the housing loan applicant, occupies the building, they'll be getting the possession letter. So this is like confirming that the building is delivered to the purchaser on so and so date. The possession and registration. Possession means physical transfer of the property. So the person has entered the house, taken possession of the house. That is possession. But possession alone is not sufficient to establish legal transfer of ownership. Okay, you cannot say I'm staying in this house, it's mine. The proof of ownership only happens to the sale deed. Okay, and for that you have to get the property registered in the local municipal records. So the seller will document saying that the property is being transferred to you. So both of you, the seller and buyer, will go to the sub-register office and get the document registered. Only then, and for registration you have to pay stamp duty to the government. It's a sort of tax. Okay, stamp duty is sort of tax on property transactions. So whenever there is a property transactions like sale, some percentage value, we'll discuss this later, some percentage of the value of the property has to be paid as tax to the government. And only after all these are completed, registration, stamp duty payment, only then actually you become the owner of the property. So the questions in this chapter you need to be aware of are: describe briefly the home loan process in banks. What is the purpose of title clearance certificate? We discuss. What is chain of conveyance? What does ULCRA stand for? What is ULCRA clearance? What does RTC stand for? What is the purpose of RTC extract? This is for agricultural lands. What if land on which house is proposed to be built is agricultural land? Or what is the conversion order? We discuss this. What is development agreement? Should land be in the name of the builder? Can builder build apartments in landowner's land? Yes. Land need not be in the name of the builder. There's something called a joint development agreement which we discussed. What is building plan? What is layout plan? What if seller is for the purpose of parking as per layout plan, but the developer built an additional flat in one corner? Then the municipal authorities will have the right to demolish that additional flat. What's the difference between layout approval plan and building plan? Are they same? No, they are different. Okay, building plan is for the building as a whole, like the municipal authorities will give the plan approval. Layout approval is like the inside, where should be what should be where, like the cellar for parking, lift, the layout of the individual house, like that. Okay, the stairways, fire exits, those are the layout. Okay, what are some NOCs to be obtained? We discuss. What is commencement certificate? What is EC? What is its purpose? How many years EC is usually required? It is 30 years. What is property tax? Why electricity bill is insisted by bank? What does it tell us? It's like a solid proof of ownership, because if you have produced electricity bills for the past 10 years, say, it's a good proof that you are residing in that property. Otherwise, why would you pay electricity bill, right? So this is like a proof confirming the ownership, not ownership, the residency of that applicant. Is income tax department clearance required? Not in every cases. In some cities, and that too, if the transaction is above a particular limit. What is valuation report? What is completion certificate? Occupancy certificate? Sale agreement? What are some details mentioned in sale agreement? Is sale agreement to be registered? Sale agreement is not mandatory to be registered, but in some cases where it is registered, it can act as a sale deed also. So what is sale deed? Why is sale deed so important? Sale deed is sale deed to be registered? Yes. What are the various certificates to be obtained from the association? What is possession letter? Is possession sufficient to establish legal transfer of ownership? No. The legal transfer of ownership only occurs after the registration of the sale deed. What is registration? Do you have to pay any tax to the government at the time of? Yes, you have to pay tax, right? You have to pay tax at the time of registration, stamp duty.